to try to deal with that stuff and be a band at the same time. I think it's been proven kind of impossible. Time and time by plenty of other people, It's really difficult. So that's kind of what was going on, that like, it's like, wow, this isn't fun. This sucks, That's what made it the bad tour. And the van kept breaking down.
So how many years into it was this tour? Oh, I actually wanted to see if you addressed two things. One was like how many years into the band you think this particular tour that you're talking about is approximately, and then the other one was like if you had any ideas where you felt like the tension or the anxiety was coming from, like the source for.
I don't know. I mean, I can, again, like, that's like getting into other people's business, They're like, you have to talk firsthand to I can't.
You just saw that it was there and it was obvious.
No, yeah, it was really obvious. I mean, you're with these people like 24 hours a day. Yeah. I mean, as far as like what was causing it or something like that, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to really talk about it in that like definitive terms, because it's somebody else's life.
Personally, I love what you said about. I love what you said about maybe it's okay for the fan to get drunk, but because it's like so much of my own life and experience that people being like disappointed, like, oh, you don't want to party, you don't want to drink. I'm like, this is my life like every day.
Yeah.
These guys are like my family.
Yeah.
And I want us all to be healthy and not die.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
not be alcoholics and not be this and that and like live to have children and books and ideas or whatever we're gonna do.
It's a weird setup. I just, like, I don't know, it's a weird, it seems like you gotta be really careful, because it's so much like, there's booze everywhere, it's just crazy. Potentially, you're just like, fuck, man, all right, I guess I'll start drinking, But I don't know, I don't want to focus too much on how it was bad. It was awesome. The other times, it was great. The first tour, it's hard to remember. It feels so long ago, but like that first tour was just like a lot of fun. The second tour was a lot of fun too. It's weird because they never, like as people and as a band, they sort of never took themselves too seriously, right? So there was always a sense of like, we want it to be fun, or else it's pointless. If we're not, it doesn't mean that you're not willing to work and that there's not difficulties, but ultimately it has to be fun. And when it stops being fun, then it kind of doesn't make any sense to do anymore. And I think that, and this happens to a lot of people in a lot of different ways, like you kind of push past that point of it being fun, and then you still think like, well, it's sort of on autopilot, but you've gone past that point of it being fun anymore. But I don't know. Like I said, tour is kind of boring, like from an anecdotal sort of point of view. Just driving a lot. We would go bowling all the time. Just like find yourself in a weird city where you don't know anybody, you don't really have any money, you don't really have anywhere to go. It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you don't have to show up till 7. What are you gonna do? So you just go bowling, or you just like go, you don't do anything. It's weird. And so you just sort of rely on each other. Like you basically entertain each other and entertain yourselves. And I feel like that's like a lot of where their point of view came from. And a lot of where the point of view of a lot of what sort of was happening in Olympia, maybe at the same time, is that we're basically just going to entertain each other and make each other laugh and just hang out, and like it's all just like inside jokes, because there's nothing else to do other than just entertain each other. So you make a band, and the members of the band are just sort of entertaining each other, and I mean this in a positive way of entertaining each other. And then the band, you're just playing for your other friends that are in other bands. So you're just sort of like, it's all just like sort of this weird feedback and this weird loop of just sort of inside jokes and stuff like that, which made it really fun and really enjoyable.
That was the first thing I think that attracted me to like was at a live show was just like the comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I felt my first impression from the first time I saw those guys was that it was so like, well, first I hated it. I was like, what the? I just didn't. My brain didn't know how to like process
The music?
what was going on.
Yeah.
Idiot.
Yeah.
And I was like super into Jesus Lizard, and I saw that show at the OK Hotel. Lane came back. We didn't know we left before, but we didn't know we just some top 40 guys.
Yeah.
But we came in, and the thing that struck me was that it's like, okay, so here's this like ferocious like metal band, and but then it's like stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Like, in between.
Yeah. Well, that's what was so great about it. I mean, that's what made it really sort of. If they had if the seriousness that was in the music carried over into this like weird sort of pseudo seriousness in the personalities, that's just really annoying, and they would have been just like weird dummies or something like that. But just like we're really like just any. I mean, there's plenty of examples of like, come on, man, really, you're that serious? So it's all like the whole thing was like a big joke in a weird way, like the whole. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't like. I mean, and that's what's sort of interesting about it and weird about it is like, and pretty like inspirational about it, is that the whole thing was a big joke, but it was completely serious at the same time, So how do you that they were able to sort of be both at the same time? Because you'd see them play. Like I said, and it would just be like, holy shit, wow. They just like fucked it up and like devastated and totally was like, it's like really overwhelming. It's this thing of just like the volume and like you said, this kind of, just the power of it is completely overwhelming. And it's just like, holy shit, what just happened? And it's just kind of a chaotic mess, But then just like kind of joking too at the end, like in between songs or at the end. I don't know where I'm going with this, but just like that, being able to have both of those at the same time is what made it pretty amazing. I mean, they were really into like Steve Martin and just like, and doing like pratfalls and just being goofballs, So there's I don't know, it's like there's something like, well, where did that kind of where did like the seriousness and like the heaviness and the intensity of the music come from, and how does it exist how do both of those things exist at once?
I thought a lot of times, I'd be interested in hearing your opinion about this, about like how that interplays with the lyrics, especially because that's like, other than if you take it, seeing it at the live show, it's more clear,
right?
Because you're. Before I knew that they were old friends, it was obvious from the first show that they clearly were old friends.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the comedy that I saw was like them like digging on each other.
Yeah, and like inside jokes, where if you go to high school with someone and then just hang out with someone all the time, I mean, everything is just kind of like, just inside jokes and just like one-liners, and a lot of the lyrics. Well, like a lot of the. I mean, the lyrics always changed. I mean, they were sort of like, depending on who was writing them, I mean, they were kind of like maybe a little bit like horror movies, like kind of a certain thing of like sort of B horror movies or like kind of like zombie kind of movie kind of thing. And then like a real relationship with living in that town and just like dealing with like stupid things in life, I mean, the name of the band was an acronym. CARP is an acronym for kill. At some point, I don't know how long this existed for, but the idea, and this is just like a story that I know from them, but like it's an acronym and it stands for kill all redneck pricks. Yeah, kill all redneck pricks. And just like that thing of like, we're in high school, we're like the weirdos, and then there's all these jocks and jerks that are like live in this town and want to fuck with us all the time. And that's where I think the sort of like the aggressiveness of potential, I mean, this is just speculation, but part of the aggressiveness of their band, and this can carry over into lots of other examples of other bands, but comes from that thing of like, we're not the kind of people that are gonna like take you up on your weird challenge to fight. Like, I'm not gonna go outside and fight you in the parking lot. But if you come to a show or if you end up at a party where my band's playing, I'm gonna totally destroy you. You know, and that's how I'm gonna destroy you. You know, and that's kind of how it is. And it's just like, okay, fuck you. You know, I'm not gonna fight you because that's stupid. That's just like dummy moves. And so a lot of it was that. A lot of the music and a lot of the lyrics, I think, came out of that. Like, just living in like this shitty small town with like, and then also a lot of the lyrics I think had to do with like how, like weird music stuff that was going on at the same time, where people in Olympia and other places were in bands that were maybe sort of along the same sort of level or whatever, but were taking themselves really seriously, and just a lot of like maybe power trips or something like that of like, we're gonna be a big band and like, this is how you should be and this is how you shouldn't be. You know, I mean, in a weird way, I feel, I mean, I don't know, I never really thought, they were kind of like total insiders, but also outsiders at the same time, because they weren't like, there were some things that were going on in Olympia that maybe they just weren't like into or something like that, or like really into being, I mean, they were goofballs. They didn't, you know, and there was this sort of like rigidity, potentially this rigidity in like the, whoa. There was like a certain rigidity at the time in Olympia, like you had to be a certain way, like you had to like have these certain kind of outfits and be into these certain bands and like be friends with these, you know, and like act this way and not act this way. And like, while they were totally part of that in the sense of like they were on the same labels as other bands and they played the same shows, they also didn't give a shit about that, you know, like they would just be goofballs. They didn't care about being cool at all. I'm not saying the name of the band ever. I'm just saying they.
It's okay.
Sorry. I mean, I think it's a given who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
But anyway.
I would like it if you could tell like specific, like differentiate the different characters a little bit. Like when
Oh,
you
that's
say
good.
they, like
Yeah.
I don't know which one you're talking about, and like who had the sense of humor and.
They all did. They. Let's see. Who had the sense of humor? I mean, that's the thing. It was really, at its best, it was a really cohesive thing. It wasn't, it's almost like there isn't, there. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to differentiate. It's a little difficult to differentiate. I mean, they're definitely like we're the individuals. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to do that. I mean, they each had their own personality. I mean, Scott and Chris and Jared, you know, were individual people, obviously. But in a way, they seem to come from some sort of common source or something like that. I think that part of the sort of natural process of them growing up and maturing and being in a band at the same time, which was inevitable, and is this differentiation, is when they started to differentiate, is when it like became problematic in a weird way, but natural. I mean, people have to differentiate from each other as you grow up, and you know, I mean, how old were they when they started playing music together? They were like 15 or 16 years old. And when the band when they stopped being a band, they were maybe 25, maybe? I don't know. You have to get that. But so anyway, I guess that differentiation was kind of maybe what became difficult to keep it together.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's an interesting idea. I mean, there's certain things I haven't exactly thought about in a specific way. But I'm trying to think of how to like qualify them individually. It's
Well, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you know, it's like they met in middle school, you know, two of them, and then Chris came into the picture as, you know, as far as Jared's concerned, right before high school. And I have, like, you know, even noticed in my own life with friends that I spent my 20s with, you know, playing music with, that it was like, when you spend, especially even more so for them, because high school is such a more, and middle school is such a more like, you know, a time when you're really founding who you are, that if you go through those, you know, cataclysmic life changes with these people, then it's kind of like, you know, I noticed with my siblings, like, who knows who started that joke that we
Right.
all tell, or who
Right.
started that, you know, face twitch that
Right.
everybody has now. Like,
Right.
it's impossible to tell who like originated any of that stuff.
right.
But I mean, do you guys did you see them as having like different roles in the band? I mean, clearly instrumentally they did.
No, it was really. I mean, I don't know because I wasn't really in on a lot of the like the sort of creative process of them writing music or recording music and practicing. But just knowing them, it just seemed like it was all pretty equal, and everybody seemed to contribute. I'm just guessing. I don't know, but it wasn't like so and so's like the lead singer. You know, like this is my band and this is my drummer. You know, it was nothing like that. It was like. It didn't develop that way. They weren't into that. None of them were like power trippers or like, there was no like egos. There was no egos because it was all a joke. It was, you know, it gets back to that thing of like, we don't take this, and it's that thing of like, it's incredibly serious at the same time. And it was like their art form, you know. But when you're 19 years old, you're not thinking of it in those terms. But in hindsight, obviously, like, they meant it. It wasn't like they weren't just like, I'm just fucking off. Like, they were really serious about it, and they wanted it to be good. And it had to be good, or else it wouldn't have made a difference, or it wouldn't have had the impact that it did. But at the same time, they never took themselves too seriously, so there was no reason for egos to get involved at all. You know? That's my sense of it. It wasn't, you know.
What did you think of them individually as like players? Like watching each of them play their individual instruments, and how it worked together.
I don't know this for sure, but it seemed like Scott was the most sort of like trained, in a sense, where he came from being in like marching band and being a marching band drummer in high school, and that was like I think that potentially that training is what gave it the sort of that Scott held it together a lot, like especially when they first started, maybe because Jared and Chris were pretty kind of rough guitar players, you know, and so much noise that it wasn't like, oh, they're sort of virtuosic, you know, solos and stuff like that. It was more just sort of filling space with just as much power as possible. But then Scott, you know, sort of held the line of the rhythm. And so that, I mean, as they got better, as they all got to be better musicians, it sort of evened out a little bit, I guess. But Scott was always like, just like, holy shit, look at that guy, you know? I mean, Jared and Chris, you'd say holy shit because they'd be like jumping off of things and like screaming their heads off and rolling around on the floor and smashing things. But Scott couldn't get up from anything, so he just had these drums, but he was just like, he had a nickname, his nickname was Maniac. And he was a maniac, you know, he went crazy on the drums. But like, and he was pretty serious about it. He took it pretty seriously. Like, he was kind of like he was sort of like an athlete in a way. Like, he was kind of closest to that kind of, maybe that kind of mindset about it, where it was sort of like, I don't know, this sort of like physical condition of himself, like being able to do this, you know, it's like moving, like running as fast as you can for a half hour, you know, and he was pretty into it.
Yeah, he's still probably the most incredible drummer I think I've ever seen.
Yeah,
And also just my favorite.
yeah,
Personally. Like, just watching him is like, what?
yeah.
Like, what are you kidding
He was
me?
an animal.
Is this happening?
Yeah, yeah. He's a good person.
I mean, it's completely anecdotal, but I'm remembering one time of him like having food poisoning, and like in between every song, laying his head on the snare drum, and he was like just green.
Just dying.
Yeah, but then
Yeah.
during the song, no one noticed.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like this sort of like weird, like he's gonna be like the champion drummer, you know? Definitely.
Oh, I mean,
Is that really bad? That sound?
It's bad if like you're like saying
Mid-sentence.
something like really vital that we.
Should I go up there and?
what?
It's just people on the roof. It's people on the roof doing stuff. I can go find out what's going on.
I think we put there. You
It's no big
go
deal.
up there.
What the hell are you doing?
Leave it, but if you
Like a
notice
covered
it
in
when you're
blood.
like in the middle of a thought, then
Yeah.
just like pause and
Yeah.
finish. Like,
For the
Comes out of nowhere. One thing I was thinking about talking about was the again, it gets back to this idea of like a certain amount of it being a joke, but then also kind of taking themselves seriously. Was like my the sort of like results. See, they're just doing it whenever they want to. Sorry. What was I thinking about? What I was thinking about was sort of like the results of that Suplex record, which was like the second record, and like the pictures that are on it. I can show you the pictures. I took the pictures on it. These pictures of them, the whole idea was like it was this wrestling record. And they took on these personas as, it was all Jared's idea too, I'm pretty sure. And so
sorry, can you start that again? Because I was totally like
Yeah.
making a mess.
Start which part again?
Just
This
like-
this record
like
talking
pull
about?
it out from like yeah.
Oh, you have to hand it to me.
No, I mean just
No,
like,
no, it's
start
all right.
from scratch.
All right. So this record, this Suplex record, was I mean, they were kind of obsessed with wrestling. Not like I don't know if they're obsessed. Maybe that's too strong a word. But the idea was like this record would have this idea that they sort of portrayed themselves as wrestlers. It was all. I think it was all mostly Jared's idea. I don't know for sure, but the idea that they were kind of be like these. They were the world champions of bands, but they were also wrestlers at the same time. And then they took on these personas, which I took the pictures of them. And Jared's the all-American lover, Chris is the bad girl, and Scott was Big Slim. But I think, like in hindsight, a little bit, like I don't know. I'm just sort of projecting this. I don't know if this is true, but I think that they kind of had to live this record down a little bit. Like, because all of a sudden it was like, oh, you're like a funny band now, you know, like you're really, I mean, and they are funny. It was a funny band, but it wasn't like, oh, you're really into wrestling, you're a funny band, and then everyone would just ask them like, wrestling, you know, like you're into wrestling, and your songs are real funny. And I don't know, I think they had like a little bit of like, oh man, that maybe we pushed it a little too far as like being like a joke, because they were serious, and so like consequently like the next record after this is just like the cover is black and like it just has severed heads on it, and it's just more like well, we have a sense of humor, but we're not just a joke, you know. And I think that there was a little like we don't want to just be it's not just funny, you know. And also so anyway, I don't know if that's just something I was
And
thinking
you're
about.
on there,
I'm on there. What do you mean?
in the middle, on the record.
Oh yeah, that's right. Here's a picture of me as a youth. And my persona is Ruby the Wire. I forgot about that. So that's the side. They named the side of the record after me, and they also named this song after me, Larch Miller. So yeah, it really was their friend. Yeah. Anyway.
Any idea what the song Lord Killer is about?
Oh, let's look at the lyrics. Yeah, it's not about me. They just named it me. It's I guess it's a song about I don't know. What am I talking about? What do I know what their songs are about? Yeah, it's just about like not doing what other people do, making your own, not following the pack. But see, like that's what I was talking about like that there was a certain way to kind of act and a certain way to be cool in Olympia at the time. Like this was not it. Like taking your shirt off and like pretending to be wrestlers was like not it. And so in a way, like it's like that was part of like why they wanted to be like more. I mean I don't know for sure, but it just feels like that was part of the like motivation to just be more and more ridiculous. It's just like it's not so serious, you know. We're not afraid of like being funny or making asses of ourselves. But they never it seemed like to me the names of the songs, this is like just a aside, but it seemed like to me like the names of the songs were never really connected specifically to the content of the songs, because my sense of it is that they just knew, like, I just remember when I was on tour with them one time, and we were in Boston, and I think the last record, is it this record? I think it was the last record that they put out was going to come out, and they had to tell the record label what the names of the songs were. But they had already been playing the songs for maybe, I don't know, a year or something like that at that point. And so they're just like, okay, that song, like, they had working titles just so they would know like what to write on a set list, but it was just, they just were sort of like winging it. Like, I think this song's called this. All right, let's just call it this. That's why they, like, let's just call this song Lorchmiller. Jared said it sounded heavy, so that was it. What else?
Okay. Let's see.
I want to hear more about them in high school.
I don't know anything.
Okay,
I didn't go to high school with
What
them.
about what
That's
year
the
maybe
water.
you met him?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great, thanks. What?
Do you remember what year it was when you started palling around?
It was probably, let's see, 90. I think I started to make, like, know them and be friends with them in like 92, 93, something like that. Sure. Yeah. It's an active block. We live in an active
That
block.
parked.
Oh, really?
Doesn't sound like that music is moving.
And
I don't think that music's going anywhere.
Here, I'm gonna go to the bathroom and turn the
I'm gonna change
microphone up.
tapes.
it's a bucket of water.
If you're gonna remember. And like just the context, you can bring it out.
The context, what context, which
Just
context?
of like in the town and in the region, and because one thing I was thinking too is that because kind of what you were saying, of like kind of like the insider outsider
Mhm.
thing, is that that was kind of even germinated from the very beginning, and when they accidentally picked what type of a band they were going to be. Because I remember myself at the time, you know, the hip stuff it's not loud.
Right.
They were like the only loud band on that label.
Yeah.
So they kind of got lucky and got to be like the token loud band, you know.
Yeah. No, it was totally weird that they were on K. In a way.
Wait for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
It's insane, the music. Are they moving outside? Should I just have some?
They're not moving.
They're not
It's
moving.
parked.
They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, it's parked.
You can hear it really loud.
I'm just gonna go down and ask them.
Okay.
I think they're looking at They're looking at the sidewalk sale. People, fucking people. Looking at the sidewalk sale.
I can go down and talk to him. I'll go down and smoke a cigarette and just...
We're trying to make a movie.
Beautiful hero.
Here comes the ice cream man to add like another.
Okay.
Here's one of your buttons.
Thanks. You came off my pants.
With me, and then just, I'll just hang out down there. We'll look at the yard sale.
This microphone picks up all that stuff. It's not just like right here.
It picks up like if you like scratch your hand or something. It's like
Oh, have I been doing that?
no, not really.
Yeah.
Actually,
Right.
I did it once, but it was like
That's fine.
it picks up like it's a really strong mic.
Yeah.
Before when she was wearing it as like a test, we could totally hear your conversation over here.
Right. Right. So it's not as low. It's not totally just like right
no,
here.
It's like around
Mm-hmm.
cardio,
Mm-hmm.
so it takes everything.
Yeah. That.
I'm totally curious to see if we hear the direct result of their conversation. Like all of a sudden it's like music.
Oh right.
Like, shut up. Yeah.
We just hear like the trunk slam. Oh, excuse me, Terrence.
So what were you thinking about?
I guess just like other bands that they were hanging out by name, like hanging out with, playing with, blah blah. You were going seeing that just were around at the time, labels.
Yeah.
So I know they did some stuff first with Slim, and then Honda. They did that weird. Well, they did the Atlas thing,
Yeah.
which is the first thing I saw. And then,
Yeah. That's their first record.
Right.
First 7-inch.
And the Slim thing, where the Kill Rock Stars deal, where they.
Oh, that 7-inch with the purple cover on it.
Yeah.
That one. Where is it? I have it. I have everything. I have it all. I have it all. They're on this 7. Have you ever seen this?
Oh, the Boston art. Yeah, I had it right last night.
There's this.
This is so crazy. This was a funny point, but this was a prideful point for us in Yakima, where nothing ever happened or was interesting or anything. Was that this guy was from Yakima that put this out?
Oh yeah.
We were like, oh, local boy, doing good.
This one? This 7-inch?
Yeah.
I think they like. This is all just like weird stories that I don't even know that I'm just like remembering in a weird way. But there's like this picture of this kid getting electrocuted, and like, okay, Olympia was great, but it was really uptight at the same time. It was so uptight. They got like in trouble from whoever. I think I might be making this up, but I'm pretty sure that there was some weird thing where like they're like, that's fucked up. You can't put that on there. Because it was such a like, that's like they're making these, they're like into like horror movies and stuff like that. They weren't like political or like trying to make like some sort of social statement. They're just like, not really, not like in an overt way, right? I mean, they were by like deciding what they cared about and what they didn't care about. But anyway, yeah, that's just a funny thing. Think about, like, you can't put that on that. You can't put that on your cover. You should ask Jared about that if you talk to him again, because it's kind of a. He did?
Oh yeah.
So that's true.
Oh, yeah,
that's like
that
a
was
real
the
thing.
break From he went positive.
That was sort of like why they never really worked with Kill Rock Stars, because they were like people were like were pissed about it or
He in a
something.
very nice way said it was. He talked a lot about.
Massive scene.
Oh, and this.
Right.
They flipped out about that.
Well, that's why Chris is the bad girl on that wrestling. On those wrestling pictures, like that was like, he was the riot girl, and it's just more of like a fuck you. I mean, it's weird to talk about because it's like, none of it was bad. I don't know. It was just like it got like it had a certain repressive quality, like this sort of intense like political correctness that came from like a positive direction of like, yeah, these are things that like we should be talking about and dealing with. But when it got into like kind of like dictating, sort of socially dictating this really, the sort of narrowness of the potential art form of like music or like design or anything like that, and then like people could get like shunned and stuff. It was really weird, you know, like you can't, like, no way, don't go see that. You know, this never happened to them, but it's that potential thing of like, that band's fucked up, like don't go see them, you know, and then they're just like ostracized or something like that. It's weird. It's weird to think about, you know, because it's just like this tiny little town in like the mid '90s, and just like kind of a narrow. And that was when like one of the interesting things about Carp is that well, for one thing, they were from there. Like a lot of people moved there to go to school, or because just the scene that was going on there attracted a lot of people. So a lot of people came there and kind of the outside agitators. They weren't outside agitators. But like those, you know, Chris, Jared, and Scott, they grew up there. So they're just like, we live here. I mean, this is just my sense of it, but it's like, we live here, we're from here. We're going to do whatever we want. Like, you're not going to kick us out or ostracize us or tell us, because we're from here. We live here. And they had a big enough like support base that it kind of didn't matter. And like the fact, like like they were on K Records, which was kind of like this like kind of, in a weird like folksy kind of like, in a way like in hindsight kind of like folksy, kind of real gentle and like kind of sweetheart cuddly records, you know, and like acoustic and like everybody relax, you know, and we're gonna sit down and everyone's gonna be quiet and we're gonna perform, you know, that whole thing of like this sort of ultra politeness, this almost weird cold politeness, and like that they were on that record label, like it worked for them, but it kind of didn't make any sense too. But there was no, the kind of music that Carp was playing was like, in like, from the perspective of then, there weren't that many bands that were really doing that. There were. Now it's like heavy rock bands, like heavy, like guitar, like intense, you know, that's sort of everywhere. But then it didn't seem, I mean, from my like limited view of back then, they didn't have a lot, it wasn't like a whole scene of that, you know. But I think that made it nice. It made it kind of like special and weirder. I mean, they never wanted to be like a metal band. It wasn't like they were a metal. I don't really consider them a metal band. They're just like, they were like a punk band, you know. And whatever, those descriptions are kind of dumb and they all sort of overlap each other. But you know, I don't know if there was any point at which they like definitively said like, we're going to be this kind of band or anything like that. I doubt it was that calculated. I think it was more like things that they heard and things that they saw that interest them and moved them, and they were like, this is awesome. And then it just sort of developed. I mean, like I said before, it was pretty like, as far as like comparison to like their last records or last record or last 7-inch, it's pretty refined to how it was when it started. It was pretty rough and like chaotic, which was great. It was just energy. It's like pure energy, and that was the idea, you know. And that came out of like, you know, had to explode, and I guess that's what they did, you know.
How do you think Carp relates, if at all, to big business, kind of like to what Jared's doing now?
How does it relate?
Or, I mean,
it's a continuum of him as an artist. I mean, that's how it relates. It makes sense. I mean, he's just kind of only gotten better.
Can you use his name
Jared?
and the name of the band?
Oh yeah. See, how do I rephrase that? Thanks.
You could just say the same thing you just
No, I know. I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, big business in some ways is a continuum of what Jared was doing in Carp, but also what Jared was. I mean, the Whip was just this weird, like, tragically short-lived band that was kind of an extension of what was going on, kind of work in a weird way, like where Carp left off. I mean, you can't have any of it. It's like you can't have any of it without all three of them. It's not like the Whip was Carp with Joe Preston playing guitar. It's like Chris made Carp what it was as much as they all did. It's just that, fuck, man, Jared's the only one that like survived in a way, unfortunately. But for me, like how big business relates to Carp in a lot of ways is it's like with the sort of, and this is just me theorizing from a distance, it's like the sort of bad way that Carp ended, the way that it was like just grim, is like, and then Scott dying is like drives like kind of, for me, and I might be making this up, but it's like the content of big business is of Jared's writing. I mean, on the Carp records, Jared would always write out all the lyrics, but he doesn't write them out on the big business ones, but I wish he would, because I think he's an amazing writer, just from writing the words, just the lyrics, and I think that the content, most of the content of the song, not most of the content of the songs, but a lot of those songs are like, in a way, like just addressing sort of maybe what happened or something like that. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to ask him to understand that definitively, but it was a formative experience for everyone, and for it to like kind of go to shit, like, I mean, but it seemed inevitable. Like, I was thinking about it, it's like, I don't, shut up, Doc. I don't think Carp could still be a band, even if everybody was like alive and happy and healthy. There was a finite quality to it. There was a finite quality to it that could only really like exist in that time and space, and with the age that they were at. And like everything kind of has its place in time potentially. And I don't think it could have I don't think it didn't have to end the way it ended, but I don't think it could have lasted either. Just because, like, we were talking about that idea of like, they started when they were so young, and this idea of like sort of differentiating yourself and becoming like, finding other interests or just kind of growing up, and like, you're not, the energy that Carp had was so intense, and like that it just sort of was unsustainable, I guess, potentially.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is kind of, do you feel like, that seemed to me like kind of like a good ending part?
That was really good. If you're not tired, I would keep asking you some questions, but
It's up to you. No, I'm fine.
I want to say one thing, just personally, hopefully I won't get tapped in the leg, but is that I thought, like, within the first, it was really cool to hear you say it, because within the first 5-10 minutes of hearing that first big business record, I was like, dude, this is about that shit.
Yeah.
Because it was like, holy crap, this is somebody, like, dealing with everything. Because it was like, it made me feel so weird. Because, I mean, just like, it was always so funny and everything, and then like hearing the lyrics, I was like, this is some sad shit.
Yeah,
like,
it's totally
how I felt
sad.
before that record, I mean, I love that record. record is rocking as hell.
Yeah.
But it is like some dark, sad shit.
Those records are really sad.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.